Well, we're going to get started. So we have Jack Stevens from MaxLogic. He's the managing director over APAC for MaxLogic. He's going to be talking about Count Books application and utilizing it with Maximo Mobile. So we'll hand it over to you.
Thank you. Thanks everyone. So I'm Jack. I was a bit nervous submitting an application to speak, so I had a look on Google, and speaking in front of crowds is actually the number one fear people have. Second is death, so that means the next time you're at a funeral, more people would rather be lying in the casket than giving the eulogy. So now I've broken the tension with a joke. So a bit about me. I'm an engineer by trade, and I guess entered the world of asset management and Maximo when I was working in Asia, consulting there. So I was helping with pre-feasibility studies on dams, and the studies fell through. The dams weren't viable. And through virtue of helping our general manager reset her laptop, she decided I was good with IT and could help them with their asset management implementation. So after a lengthy process, we landed on Maximo. The company had traditionally been a black box operator, so procure fuel for the power plants and then trade the power to make income. So that went towards more of a greenfield or running all the operations, maintenance, with that in place, works management and everything else. We had to go towards centralized inventory, which is something helped set up, which is where kind of developed an interest in what's always in Maximo as a quantity, not balancing with what technicians find on the shelves. So this talk, I guess, kind of looks into some of the ways that we can maybe try and balance that better within the Maximo system, and what our technicians, our inventory team physically see on the shelves. And the second part of that is how we can further optimize that with mobile devices. So where does mobility enter in, and how can that assist us? Yeah, so I guess just to set the expectation for what you should walk away with from this call, understand what cycle counting actually means within a warehouse and how this differs from maybe what I call a physical counts process, which is fairly standard. A lot have implemented, they do this well, perhaps struggle more on the cycle counts front. Understand what the count book is within Maximo, how that's kind of traditionally been done, and where we can look to leverage that application to improve those counts and that entire process for our warehouse team. Because we do this for a lot of mobile POCs, I thought I'd give some insights into maybe some of the high-level enablers to implementing mobile. So before you actually rush in to start the project, what needs to be set up in the background to help guarantee some success around that, and then finally how that can be leveraged to further aid in that process. Initially when I submitted, I was going to do this as a live demo and walk you all through it, but it was very strongly advised to me not to do a live demo by several people and the conference organisers, so I'm just going to talk through it. We do have a booth out there though, so happy to kind of show it if it's of interest, come by. Yeah, so what's account for? One of the major KPIs for warehouse teams, especially within the energy industry, is balancing, quantities present within your platform with what physically actually exists on the shelves. How that tends to be done is through maybe something like an annual stock take. So every year everyone sets aside 2 weeks, they work 12 hours a day going through and counting 10,000 items across all the shelves. There's a large financial reconciliation component that comes from that. we don't set out for things to differ between platform and real life, but life happens. People are busy, things get missed in your issuance logs. Especially you see this a lot with open storerooms, when technicians are maybe tasked or responsible to issue out those parts. If there's no dedicated warehouse supervisor versus a closed storeroom, that can be much more tightly controlled through your inventory usage within the system. So all those kind of factors, I guess, lead to what's in your platform might not necessarily match with, what's sitting on the shelves, and over time, technicians need to create workarounds. They might start kind of spare parts hoarding to make up for that shortfall. That very quickly exacerbates the problem. Something that we kind of like to look at how we can maybe make that process a bit more fluid, and that's really where that counts comes in. Cycle count. So instead of doing one large annual stock take, I try and break it up into a continuous repetitive task throughout the year. That could be done daily, it could be done weekly. I've got X amount of items which form a percentage of my warehouse that I need counted, and that way I'm not having to go towards that large annual stock take. And that, maybe you've seen, are there many Maximo inventory users in here at the moment? Great, yeah, quite a lot. So you're probably familiar with the ABC analysis report. The idea of that is when you start to get your cycle count humming, you can also have Maximo run analysis for you and categorize your assets as A types, B types, and C types. A types are the highest turnover items in terms of cost and issuance, and they're what we want to count the most frequently. C types, we want to count the least frequently, use the least effort. N types, we don't necessarily touch. So if I've got a large, say, transformer critical spare part, I don't really have to go and count that once every 3 months, considered my N type. So yeah, count books is really taking what I've been discussing around that cycle counting, and IBM's put that into place. I'd say it's been around a while, but compared to other applications within the suite, it tends to get overlooked, and it does have a lot of bang for its buck for how simple it is to set up, as well as kind of its dependence and interworkings within that Maximo Mobile environment. So yeah, count books, I guess traditionally, or maybe some audience members will be familiar with this, you'd run a cycle count as a BERT report. You might dump that out to an Excel file, have a list of your items. You might even print that file, go out, get all your quantities, tick them through, go back to your stores, manually encode that data. There's a lot of steps, there's a lot of labour hours involved having to make that work. So yeah, trying to, does that ring a bell for anyone? That kind of, yeah, a few nods. So with the count books, we could move away from that BERT style inventory adjustments, balancing and reconciliation process towards doing it directly through the one application, which is quite helpful. So the count books themselves are fairly straightforward to set up within the application. I'll kind of run through that, have a few screenshots. What's probably important to understand is what are the criteria available for when I set up the counts. So when we start out, maybe our organisational maturity or strategy, we're still working on it when it comes to inventory. I'll usually look at all item or bin. So all I'm just selecting a storeroom, and that's going to put everything within that storeroom within my count book. A few, I guess, war wounds or lessons from that approach. A count book is a physical count. If you put 10,000 items into it and then have your stores go and capture it, it's moving away from kind of the intent, which is smaller, kind of quickly used sets that we can run through, count, and then approve off in time. So that brings us more towards item and bin. Item, I'll select a subset based on my item number. Bin, I'll just go through. If I've got bins assigned to my inventory item, I can then just pull and based on the sections of my warehouse, get that set up to run. When that's working, as we start to grow in competency, we can then go towards something like count frequency, which is leveraging that ABC analysis that we were looking at before, or I can start to go to ICG, the inventory count groups. That's a little field you may have noticed popping up in your inventory that's blank, has a magnifying glass, there's nothing attached. So the idea of that is that's a flexible way to categorize your inventory items into different groups that can straight away be pulled up onto that count book. Good question. So tools these are all the options, but what you do if you've got different commodity groups is you take advantage of that ICG. So you just export your commodity groups loaded against your ICG field, and then you can batch them through that way and create a book per commodity. And by tools, it's more looking at the actual tool master application itself as opposed to tool the commodity, although it does say commodity, so I can see that confusion. So looking at stock tools, items that get issued but are returned back into the storeroom after completion. So not quite a live demo, but once I've got my count book set up, here's how it looks. So it's just going to cascade my list of numbers. If it's an asset, it will give me a serial number. The only difference between assets and stock is an asset can only have a count of 1 or 0. It's there or it's not there. In terms of the stock itself, come over this side, I'll run through and I guess a few kind of things to note or look at. So my count is going into that physical count field. My store clerk is going through, bang, 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 clicking through those numbers. If they match, I'll get a tick within that match checkbox. If they don't, like the next line, that will be left blank. And there's also an organisational tolerance. So on the third line, because I've got an organisational tolerance of 5% where I'm allowed to reconcile, that will give me a tick. That's fully adjustable just through your org settings. Most that we deal with like a 0% tolerance, and then they quickly loosen that over time when counts start to happen more frequently and they realise the actual state of their warehouse and inventory levels. You've also got an override tolerance sitting in inventory on the items themselves. So you could put a higher tolerance on certain items, and you could have critical spares, strategic spares, which is 0% tolerance. They must exactly match. So the reason we're looking at this is all done on desktop Maximo. Once I run through mobile, you'll see kind of the difference and simplicity of how IBM's developed that screen to look. So once my count's done, I'm going to reconcile everything that's matched. My reconciliation checkbox will select on, and what I missed on the last was, as I'm filling out these numbers within my inventory my physical count straight away updating as well as my count date. You'll also see that reconciled is unchecked. As I move the account book to in prog, select reconcile, all will automatically reconcile, check. If they're matched, I also have the option to manually select them on, and that can be stripped away based on access permissions if we want. Once done, I'll complete the count book, everything will reconcile, and within the inventory application, reconciliation will check off, current balance will update with my physical count. Yeah, so if you select unreconcile, it will deselect everything that isn't matched. So if one of your clerks has gone through and clicked to reconcile everything, it's like a quick link option to let you remove that check from anything that's not matched in inventory. Just the physical count. So it's status driven, so it's in prog, it won't update the current balance until that moves to complete. Yeah. So you'll reconcile everything, checkbox will go on, it hasn't actually reconciled in inventory till that status change happens. Yeah, so there's a built-in one, starts at, oh, you're testing me, waiting for approval, approved, in prog, and then complete. So fairly straightforward. Whappers for your setup, what storeroom you're building it for, and what items you're actually selecting onto the book. Once it's approved, it's then transactable, and the second someone starts putting something into physical account, that will update to in prog automatically. It will then sit at in prog until usually the warehouse, so the clerk role brings it to in prog, warehouse supervisor role completes it, reconciles everything off. It would sit within the in prog as a synonym status before you move it through to complete. So you just have it route through to whoever your financial approvers are. Yeah, I'm surprised we haven't done that. It's a good idea. Yeah. And much easier for finance to get this than have to look at massive dumps or what they do at the moment for that reconciliation, which is all through reports. No, it'd be quite straightforward to set up, just be that change status and adding an additional hat before it comes to complete. Yep. Yeah, so even though the item ID is the same, because it's a rotating item, you've got a different asset ID that's pulling through. So it looks pretty much the same. The only difference is your physical counts a 1 or a 0 against that, where you pop up with an error, because assets either exist or they don't exist. You can also do as a sub-selection, you've got an option for assets or rotating, so it's only pulling in from that store all your rotating assets. So you might want to segregate them out from your standard items. It's got the asset ID, which Maximo tends to love, but in the real world, it's probably the serial number, and that sits here. Obviously, on this sample data, they've been a bit naughty and not captured the serial number, but that's what you'd use to reconcile. Sorry, I might have missed it. Yeah, so when you're setting that up, you can see that storeroom up the top. So like, yeah, like this gentleman said, if it's not in that storeroom, if it's already deployed in an operating location, you're not pulling that through on this count book. No, it treats assets a bit differently. So your physical count will be 0, and then you usually have to use the asset move. Yeah, yep. It won't let you just reconcile and write off an asset. Yeah, you'll do it via asset move through the life cycle management. Yep. Sorry, if there's no difference. Yeah, so when you reconcile and go to do the adjustment, your storerooms will usually have where your write-offs to. So the GL's set up against the storeroom, and that's what captures that difference in cost as your write-off. Yeah, which is why routing to finance would, yeah, be a good addition. Yeah. That you're writing off. Not out of the box. Yeah, so I can set up a report, have that run on the GL for that write-off, or can just categorize it per item. Yeah, it's yeah, no, it'll be easy to develop because you've got that captured when you're doing that mass reconciliation. Out of box, there's nothing showing like what items are most frequently having to be reconciled. But then you could start to do a bit of RCA deep dive as well. What's the reason that everything existing in this store or this bin area, is going out? Yeah, absolutely. That'd be a good thing to add. Yeah, so that's kind of. Oh. That's right. You'll get an error on the screen. It'll. No, but in this for this customer's POC, we made it editable so that they could update. We also added through mobile that they could take pictures of the stock and it would update Item Master so they could start to create. They wanted like an Amazon-based interface for item searches, so that you know how the usual inventory search is kind of line-based. Lots of information, maybe not super easy for technicians to know what items they actually need. So this was kind of sitting behind that and feeding that data instead of having to do a massive piece of work gathering everything one by one. They could do it through count books over time. So there's an organisational setting to allow blind counts, so they can be on or off. So usually good practice to have them on for your clerks, off for your kind of warehouse supervisor hat. But yeah, just depends. But you've got flexibility with that, whether you want that on or off. Alright, yeah, so that's kind of how cycle counts looks. I didn't like the text there. That's alright. This is a bit of a pitch for IBMs, I can skip that. But I guess what's important is Maximo Mobile, we're now going to step into how this then complements your count books process further by making it a bit easier for your warehouse team or your techs to go in and put in an update. That was 9.1, 9.1 patch 3, I think so. Yeah, so a bit of a precursor. Some enablers before we implement mobile, and we're kind of looking at Maximo Mobile, but it's irrelevant, doesn't matter if it's Easy Max, if it's, I don't know, other third-party tool you use. Kind of always similar things we like to look at first. First is to mass or not to mass. We don't implement Maximo Mobile unless they're on mass first. The difference on 7.6 and mass is too great. They just run into a lot of headaches. I know that in theory, Maximo for EAM is supported with 7.6, but my recommendation would be, if you have the chance, make the move to mass first and have the right underlying technology before you embark on a mobile rollout and program. Connectivity is key. Mobile likes to tout offline mode as kind of the all and end all, but in a controlled setting like warehouse, we want that device to be online whenever kind of possible and applicable. And when it is offline, we like to kind of promote it's synced at least once daily. So work with teams to see, what's their existing Wi-Fi like, especially in the storeroom. What's the coverage like? What connectivity types allowed? Can they have cellular? Is it only through company network, through Wi-Fi? Have they done any dark spot analysis or anything like that? So offline mode's great, but yeah, if you have the chance, staying online just seems to produce much better results. Device itself, so are you going with iOS or Android? Both work. Tend to probably find iOS works a touch better, and it works also with MVI, visual inspection. I don't believe Android does, but IBM might have updated that. So visual inspection's more in the automated defect detection space, but yeah, it's something to consider. Individual or pooled. There's pooled mode, but in general, individual just lowers points of failure. So always recommend dedicated devices for people instead of here's a box with 5 mobile devices, whoever's in picks one and syncs for the day. We find that the savings from pooled are offset by companies' internal IT having to troubleshoot issues with pooled devices, and that's not Maximo specific, that's kind of any enterprise software rollout that you're putting on a device. And then what's that device being used for? Is that a warehousing tool, or is it everything for your company? What are the use cases? And that will determine kind of the next part on the considerations, which is what's the mobile device management in place, making sure that everything's open so nothing's getting blocked. Is that updated on your client, on your app store internally? And we do run into blockers with cyber if this is the first in their kind of mobile rollout or strategy. Do cyber policies support a mobile program? Have they been updated? Do they need help that can take a long time to get resolved before you're actually getting to the POC stage. It doesn't always happen, but just something to consider. And then of course, do I need to update any foundational architecture? What's kind of my high-level diagram, low-level diagrams for that flow through? Mobile's quite different to other network connections, so just something to consider. Yeah, so there's some points around how we get mobile set up. So app focus, we like count books, we like work execution, quite fixed, fixed applications in terms of what they're trying to do and promote, do them as a POC style rollout. Everyone's very clear around what the objectives and goals are of it. Once that's in place, then expand out the use cases as needed, as opposed to, say, a big bang. Like to keep it out of the box as much as possible, let people use it, and then see what's really hurting productivity and process efficiency after they've actually had that chance to get used to it. Yeah, what understand kind of ties in, but what does day one actually look like? You know, what do I expect to be working? How's my team going to support it? Which kind of looks at that embed and support. Like to be on site. Mobile just adds a lot of maybe new sources of potential conflict and error, which haven't been considered on against a desktop. You know, you just don't know how people are using the device or what they might be doing, which could be causing a problem, which can mean you see some pretty freaky errors. So it's good to be there, holding hands for the first couple of weeks, making sure everyone's happy with the new way of working and how that's fitting in. And yeah, here's kind of the count books on, this is using role-based on mobile, so here's how it comes through. You'll have a list of different count books, which inventory can select. It will give you some statistics based around when the last count date was, what the status of those books are. And if you remember kind of that screen we're on before in desktop, here's the mobile embodiment. So quite straightforward. I've got a number, and in the top right, I've got a QR scanner, or sorry, barcode scanner. So very, very helpful if you QR tag your inventory. Always recommend QR, not barcode for phones, because 3 points of contact, so much, much easier to pick up than barcodes. Mobile doesn't like barcodes. Get a barcode scanner if you've got barcodes. Yeah. That's right. So not a blind count. That's right. Not a blind count. So I can see, yeah, what that last physical count is. In that example, they had items across multiple bins, and they wanted to go towards centralized bins. So it was helpful for them to know what was deployed across the warehouse and centralize through that. So you'll run through, put in your count, blind count, you won't see that, or the last physical count update. As you go through, you'll save, and they'll move from in progress through to counted, and that will all then be updating that count book screen we're on before. So warehouse clerks do this, warehouse supervisor sits in office. Once they're ready and saved, he can go through, see everything, see it being updated in real time from the field. Yeah, that's pretty much it from me. I'd say any questions, but got a few questions through it. Any more questions? Count books, the desktop application's fine on 7.6, very robust, yeah. Just the mobile one I'd tread lightly at incorporating. If you're looking at Maximo Mobile, if it's a different product, then for the count book. Yeah, yeah. Ad hoc count is a killer, yeah, especially if you've got a big beastly warehouse. So yeah, so what we did to get around that was change the default query on the ad hoc count to only look at a specific subset of items and keep it under 700. And then they had a company rule that, oh sorry, not company rule, best performance rule I'd say, to keep cycle count set to 500 or less items per batch for some of the ways. But we're running into, they had 85,000 items enrolled in the storeroom, and ad hoc count was just hanging. Yeah. Correct. Yeah. That's right. So you'll then cascade it all through that count book. Yeah, it's probably a good one to quickly touch on. I didn't get the screenshot, sorry. So we looked at count books, but there's also an ad hoc count on mobile. So the scenario there is warehouse clerk's a bit bored, nothing going on. He can click ad hoc count, go and start scanning areas of the warehouse, doing a count, just a bit more maybe informal, then it will flow through, get reconciled, so you're not having to set anything up in the first place. And what we were just discussing then is that tends to fall over if mobile has to sync 10,000 inventory items for that ad hoc count to work. But there's also the preloaded databases for that we use that more on the execution. I might ask our techie as well on that. Use some tips. Yeah, it works.
Can you also view images of the inventory?
You can. So if you click that arrow, there'll be a little image counter there, and you can also take a picture. Yep, and there'll be some additional information. Sorry, not that arrow. This arrow on the drop down. You could, and then I think they changed it, so I'll have to check if it's come back in or not, but last time we did it we had to allow that setting and have it pull through to Item Master so that they could build up that image repository that way. Alright, thank you. Oh, very good. Add me.